Hi, I'm Janet. I'm a volunteer with the Lincoln Park Conservancy, and we're going to do our last wildflower tour of the pond for 2020. So every plant has a scheme to get its seeds distributed, because if they all just fell to the ground right under the plant, they would be in competition and nobody would have much of a chance. Oh, now see here, here's where you can see all the backlit goldenrod. We talk about it. We haven't mentioned the goldenrod. Yeah. This field of goldenrod is full of seed heads, and they have a pappus which gives them a silvery glow in the sunshine, and the seeds are wind distributed, but these are also a favorite of the birds, so it's not unusual to see goldfinches and chickadees swaying on these stems and picking out the little seeds, just like I am. Something else that's happening around the pond in the winter is that a lot of insects are finding a home to spend the winter. This is an insect gall. This is a rosette of leaves that formed around an egg that was inserted into this goldenrod plant. So I can tell that inside there's going to be a larva developing over the winter. And in fact, in a lot of the leaf litter on the ground, there's a lot happening. This leaf litter is going to break down, and its nutrients will be recycled for next year's plants. But there are also a lot of eggs that have been laid on the leaves that are going to overwinter next to the ground where it's warm, and they'll be next year's crop of insects that will help feed the birds, and they'll interact in this whole complex ecosystem around the pond. We have a lot of Joe Pye weed around the pond, and by now they've lost all of their seeds. They've been eaten or they've blown away on their little pappus parachute, and we're left with this structure, this beautiful structure that shows the compound umbel that is the flower head. It looks like all one flower, but we can see each of these little stalks leads to another stalk, and the flowers are at the very tips of each of these. So this is the kind of structure left behind by the compound umbel flowers, and we have a number of them around here. Around the pond we have a number of Artemisia family plants. These are not native. They have kind of long feathery leaves, and they tend to be silvery in a lot of the Artemisias. If you were to crumble a leaf and smell it, you'd see that it's highly aromatic. And this is also known as wormwood and mugwort. These have been used as smudges. They've been gathered and bundled to burn as smudges. The wormwoods flavored things like vermouth, or verms, or worms, and absinthe, the notorious liqueur. These Artemisias tend to impart a very bitter flavor, so it's been used for bitters. And some of these plants use kind of an unusual way of recruiting the wind. They actually detach from their stems, and they become one of the class of plants called tumbleweeds. And they blow across the land and drop off their seeds, their tiny little seeds, along the way. So that's their wind they have wind distribution without having a feathery pappus. Another wind distributed seed is the seed of this anemone. This anemone is called thimbleweed because the seed head forms a structure that looks very much like a sewing thimble. But then the next step is that it explodes into these little white pappuses that are carried away by the wind, leaving, when it's all finished, just this little core with no more seeds on it. So it's very effectively wind distributed. And then another means of distribution is fruiting. So plants create a fruit around the seeds, just like the ground cherries. And this is actually another nightshade, another one of the Solanaceae. And this is horse nettle, these attractive yellow fruits. Now those are not edible, they're toxic, except to the animals that enjoy them. And the animals will eat the fruit and then excrete the seeds, depositing them in a little bit of fertilizer that gives them a head start for next year.
Very clever.
Hmm?
Very clever.
Yes. And this is buttonbush. So its little globe of seeds also gets eaten by the birds. And you can see, again, they pick them out one by one. And pretty soon we'll have just a little naked core there, and the seeds will all be gone. Getting back to wind distributed seeds, I think dandelions and milkweeds are two that we think of most prominently. So the milkweed has a pod that splits open or dehisces, and it sends its seeds out into the world. And sometimes they don't get very far. They get hung up in other plants. And sometimes they get carried a little farther away. Another plant that creates a fruit in order to distribute its seed is the hawthorn. So here we have these bright red hawthorn berries that are going to attract a lot of robins and squirrels and other birds to come and eat the seeds, eat the fruit, digest the nice pulpy fruit, and then deposit the seeds in a convenient package of fertilizer. Here we have the fruit of the rose plant, and this is called a rose hip. And it's a fleshy fruit containing numerous seeds, and these are eaten and carried off by animals. And of course, we've all heard of rose hip tea, high in vitamin C. So that's the rose's way of getting its fruit out for the next generation. Thank you for joining me for our last wildflower tour of the year, and I hope we'll see you next year.